just a few moments, you will be listening to a recorded podcast from Champion Church in Skipton. We hope that the message you hear becomes an encouragement to you today. We'd love to connect with you, so send us an email at hello@championchurch.co.uk. You can also like our Champion Church Skipton Facebook page or follow at Skipton Champion on Twitter. Happy listening!
Hi, it's lovely to be with you here today. So you're in a series of Heroes of Faith, and the woman I'm going to speak to you about, I don't know whether you know her story so well. I definitely didn't know her so well before studying about her, but she is the sort of iconic "It is well with my soul" woman. So that was good that we just sang that. She's the Shunammite lady, and so what I thought was I'd just read it to you, for those of you who don't know it so well, and then we'll unpack it a bit and see the stories we can get out of it. So yeah, it's a little, well, I'll see if I can skip some bits, but I want you to get the whole story. So one day Elisha, the prophet, went to Shunem, and a well-to-do woman was there who urged him to stay for a meal. So whenever he came by, he stopped there to eat. She said to her husband, "I know that this man who often comes our way is a holy man of God. Let us make him a small room on the roof and put it in it a bed and a table and a chair and a lamp, and then he can stay there whenever he comes to us." One day, when Elisha came, he went up to his room and lay down there. He said to his servant Gehazi, "Call the Shunammite." So he called her, and she stood before him. And Elisha said to him, "Tell her you've gone to all this trouble for us. Well, now what can be done for you? Can we speak on your behalf to the king or to the commander of the army?" And she replied, "I have a home among my people." In other words, I'm okay, thanks. What can be done for her? Elisha asked. And Gehazi said, "Well, she has no son, and her husband is old." Then Elisha said, "Call her." So he called her, and she stood in the doorway. "About this time next year," Elisha said, "you will hold a son in your arms." "No, my lord," she objected. "Don't mislead your servant, O man of God." But the woman became pregnant, and the next year about that same time she gave birth to a son, just as Elisha had told her. The child grew, and one day he went out to his father, who was with the reapers. My head, he said to his father. His father told a servant, Carry him to his mother. Carry him to his mother. Yeah, the mother will sort it out. After the servant had lifted him up and carried him to his mother, the boy sat on her lap until noon, and then he died. She went up and laid him on the bed of the man of God, and then shut the door and went out. She called her husband and said, "Please send me one of the servants and a donkey so I can go to the man of God quickly and return." "Why are you going to him today?" her husband asked. "It's not the new moon or a Sabbath." "It's all right," she said. See? All is well. She saddled the donkey and said to her servant, "Lead on. Don't slow down for me until I tell you." So she set out and came to the man of God at Mount Carmel. When he saw her in the distance, the man of God said to his servant Gehazi, "Look, there's the Shunammite. Run to meet her and ask her, 'Are you all right? Is your husband all right? Is your child all right?'" "Everything is all right," she said. All is well. When she reached the man of God at the mountain, she took hold of his feet. Gehazi came over to push her away, but the man of God said, "Leave her alone. She is in bitter distress, but the Lord has hidden it from me and has not told me why." "Did I ask you for a son, my lord?" she said. "Didn't I tell you don't raise my hopes?" Elisha said to Gehazi, "Tuck your cloak into your belt, take my staff in your hand and run. Lay the staff on the boy's face." But the child's mother said, "As surely as the Lord lives, as you live, I will not leave without you." So her faith was in the God of Elisha. So you can send your servant off all you like, but I'm not leaving until you. So it says, so Elisha got up and followed her. Gehazi went on ahead and he tried to raise the boy. It didn't work. Then Elisha came and he laid out, it says he got on the bed, he lay on the boy, mouth to mouth, eyes to eyes, hands to hands. He stretched himself out upon him. The boy's body grew warm. Elisha turned and walked away and came back and did the same thing. The boy sneezed 7 times and opened his eyes. Resurrection. We serve a resurrection God. Elisha summoned Gehazi and said, call the Shunammite. And he did. And when she came, he said, take your son. She came in and fell at his feet and bowed to the ground. And then she took her son and went out. So there's 3, I think, main points that I would like to take from this wonderful mother's life. And, you don't have to be a mother or a father to really care about the next generation. But I'm sure all of you know what it's like to really, really deeply care about something that's going wrong in the next generation. So I think we can all identify with her. We may not have a son who's died, but maybe a child who's something in their life has gone wrong. But there's 3 lessons that I've been really thinking about this story. The first one is she made space for God. She literally, she was perceptive about people, and she discerned that Elisha was a holy man of God. And she was very persuasive, she persuaded Elisha to stay for a meal with her and her husband whenever he was in Shunem. And that was so she could be near him, the man of God, and she could be blessed by the word, and she could bless him. So she literally, did a home remodeling job, persuaded her husband, and got a room on the roof in the physical. But how can the challenge is for us to create room and space in our lives for God? Because the truth is, how could she have said, it is well, when it blatantly wasn't? Her precious only son had just died in her arms, yet she spoke not a word of it to her husband of Gehazi. She just said, it's well. She ran for the man of God. And the way she could do that was because she had spent time. She had made room for the word of God in her life. And really that's the only way we can truly say it is well, is if we know the character of God. And we know that regardless of the circumstances all going south, regardless of that, I am the child. I'm no longer a slave to fear. I'm a child of the living God, and he's got a rescue plan for me somewhere. And that's how we can say it is well. Because you might have found sometimes that you tell certain people about a problem and, it'll be all right. And they're just being kind. Well, do you trust that? You don't know it's going to be all right. It might not be all right. But you can trust God. So the challenge is about making space in our life, and maybe we're happy with the space that we've made in our life, or maybe God's saying, making space, a room in our life is as individual as we are. So for me, I like to walk to work sometimes. I live in Carlton and I work in Skipton. I like to walk across the fields. I like to pray then. I like to pray in tongues as well in the Spirit. And I feel it's a bit like plugging my mobile in to be recharged. I kind of pray in tongues a bit, and I'm kind of banking the Spirit a bit. I'm Anybody else get what I'm talking about there? Yeah. And also, I'm quite a busy woman. What Nick said spoke to me. And so, I haven't got time always to sit down. In fact, rarely have time to sit down for an hour in the morning, which I would love to do, which my mother modeled to me. And she does sometimes sit down for a marathon, like 2.5 hours. But, but I've developed other ways. So I can pray on my fingers. I put things on my fingers, declarations that I can make about God's truth about me, that wherever I am, if I'm washing the dishes, I've just got shopping, I've got them on my fingers, and in my heart I can be, just using that time. We've developed a time between us, husband and wife. It's good for husbands and wives to pray together. It's good for you to pray with others. And we went many years with our 4 children when we probably didn't find the time. But now it's just us, and we like to pray we like to have breakfast together and say a prayer for the day. So that's a good time to make a space for God. Or last thing at night, maybe read a psalm. It's as individual as you are, and God will show you. That's all I can say. But I can say you're banking then your knowledge of him, so that you can say all is well in all occasions. So just saying about that. I mean, meeting with others to praise him, listening to teachers, and that's reading books. That's all part of making a room for God. Maybe you might need to clutter out some stuff in the room, to make more space. And there may be things in your life that you think, actually, just like you would maybe take some clothes to the charity shop and get it out of your house. That can go for my life. I don't need to watch the news 5 times round, the same news, whatever it is. It's removing the clutter. And also not allowing kind of sin and guilt to keep us from God's presence. Remember in the garden, Adam, when he ate the apple, then he wanted to hide from God. He didn't want to hang out with him. But since Jesus paid the price on the cross, if we slip up and we miss the mark, you know what? We're children of God, and we can run into his arms and ask him for help to deal with whatever it is. And because that's characteristic of Christians. No matter if we fall down 6 times, we will get up 7 times. So the Shunammite, again, just spending time with God, I noticed that she was real with her emotions. She wasn't, but with the right person. So we can be real with God about everything. We can give him our complaint. He will listen to us about everything. We can be absolutely real. He knows it all anyway. But choose who you're real with. So even her husband, how is he? It is well, even her husband, because she knew her husband couldn't raise him. So she chose who she told her complaint to. Even Gehazi, the servant, how's your child? He's well. It's a bit of wisdom here about how we deal with who we tell. Yeah? And it's not that we should bottle our emotions up all the time and just be stiff upper lip and never tell anybody. We tell God first, and then he may give us a trusted friend to share it with and to pray with and to come through. So point number 2, based on her knowledge of God, she developed hope and faith. The Shunammite had the terrible stigma of being childless in those days. She had an old husband. In other words, he was going to die soon, and no child to provide. So although she was a well-to-do woman, she maybe her future was quite bleak. And over the years, her hope of having a child had almost died. So although she was very kind to Elisha, when he said, you're going to have a child next year, don't get my hopes up. Just in the way she says that, how she's battled with that heart's desire for so long. And finally, so the only way I can live with this pain is just to kill off those hopes. And I don't know whether any of you have ever felt like that. I felt like that for a while, and I remember going to hear a preacher, and he was talking about your heart's desires, and I was angry. It's like, don't talk to me about heart's desires. Just leave me be. I can handle my life if you don't ask me to get my hopes up again. So you can hear her heartache and that aching hope against hope that God would fulfill her dreams. But her hope and her faith grew with her child to the point where she does not appear to waver in faith even when her son dies. She lays him on the prophet's bed and goes straight for Elisha. Her faith is in the God of Elisha, not even in the God of Elisha's servants. She stays with Elisha until he goes back with her. And her faith plays its part in pulling down her breakthrough into her life. She had experience. By making room for God, she had experience of God as a resurrection God. Resurrection of her hope and her dream. She had a child. So that helped her to then have faith that the resurrection God would actually raise her child up again. In Psalm 37 it says, "Trust in the Lord and do good. Dwell in the land and enjoy safe pasture. Delight yourself in the Lord and he will give you the desires of your heart." And really, she had done good. She trusted in she'd got close to the man of God, and she'd gone to the expense and energy to create him room. And she delighted in spending time with him, and she'd been given the desires of her heart. But we come to us, what's interesting is after the cross, she'd done those things, and I'm not saying that it's not good to do things, but really one thing that's so important to really get is it's not based on our works. It's not based on our works that Jesus will say to us, "What do you want?" Like he said to the disciples. It's the first thing Jesus said to the disciples in the Apostle John's letter. When they were following, we turned around and said, "What do you want?" And he's interested in the desires of our heart. He's interested. In fact, as we become Christians, he does a heart transplant. He puts a tender, soft heart in place of our stony, hard heart. So our heart desires are already in lining up with his will. And he's interested in our heart's desires. And just like Elisha said to the woman, "What can we do for you?" And she's like, "Oh, I'm all right. I'm all right." It's the same way that Jesus is actually very gently opening back up our heart's desires. So the third thing I notice about this lady is she's quite a modern lady. She has confidence and authority. She's assertive. Yeah, they say that if you can be assertive, you don't need to be aggressive. This lady is assertive. She was kind, yeah, but she was not particularly bolshy, I don't think. But look at the way she urged Elisha to stay for the meal. Do you think Elisha really could say no? I'm actually going down the road. She urged him, and look at the way she persuaded her husband to remodel their house. It doesn't actually say too much about what the husband thought of that. It's like, okay. And she says to her husband, "I need a servant and a donkey. No messing." She got it. And the way that she's not just satisfied with Gehazi and Elisha's stick. She wants the man himself. "Get up. I need you. Come with me. I need you." And she had confidence, enough confidence in her God to say, "All is well." So it's the same for us when a challenge or a trial arises. Daniel 11:32 says, "But the people who know their God shall be strong and do great things." So it's all, can you see how it's all coming through? It's the first thing of making room, And then its hope starts coming back again. And then it's gathering confidence. It's knowing. I really like to get together scriptures. I kind of, promise scriptures. They're like my pearls, and I'll put my feet on them. I'll stand on them and say, this is God's promise to me. And that makes me feel more confident about a situation. Later on, when Elisha had really angered the king of Aram, I don't know whether you know that story, but basically the king of Aram kept on trying to attack Israel, and he kept on being foiled by the dastardly Elisha, who kept on knowing what he was doing because he was getting intel from God. The king of Aram's going to do this, so then he was telling the king of Israel. And somehow the king of Aram found out about this and sent an army to take out Elisha. So Elisha and his servant found themselves surrounded by a strong force of horses and chariots. So Gehazi was pretty upset, the servant. But Elisha prayed, "O Lord, open his eyes so that he may see." And he saw that the hills were full of horses and chariots of fire all around Elisha. So again, the confidence that Elisha had was because he could see what God could do, God of the impossible, what he can do. And let us spend time with him so we can more and more see, that our eyes can be open and see what God of power, God of the impossible, can do in situations. The Shunammite lady acted with assertiveness and authority, and the Bible is full of references to heaven being like a court. And you kind of, as a follower of God, it's good to know the legal basis on which you stand. And the cross was the greatest legal transaction in history. And Jesus talks about, if you're sick, come and exchange that in for my healing. By his stripes you will be healed. And there's all kinds of exchanges that we can do. If you've got strife in your family, come to Jesus and exchange it in for peace in your family. If you've got worry, come to Jesus and exchange it in for again, peace. And Romans 8:9, it says all creation is just straining and waiting for the sons and daughters of God to take their place in confidence, in assertiveness, based on who they are, their identity, that they will be able to, act in a way that people would never expect. Do you remember when Peter and John came before the court and people were saying, these men are just kind of fishermen, they're just working class men, but the way that they are behaving and holding themselves and acting with confidence is really remarkable. And that, I think, can be the same for all of us. So, nearly finished here, but just all is well, because all is well, because all is wonderfully well. That lovely Bethel song it was actually taken from the melody, and some of the words were taken from the original hymn by Horatio Spafford. And actually he had 4 daughters and a wife, and his daughters went down in a shipwreck. He wrote that song, "It Is Well With My Soul," as he was going to visit that place. He says, it is well with my soul, though Satan should buffet, though trials should come, this blessed assurance control. Christ has regarded my helpless estate. He has shed his own blood for my soul. It is well. And what he got hold of was the fact that at the cross is the answer for it all. And that's why he could write that incredible hymn, that old hymn, which is taken forward with the Bethel one. then, Julian of Norwich herself, who wrote, all shall be well, and all shall be well, and all manner of things shall be well. She was a nun who lived in 1390. She wrote about 1395. She'd suffered a serious illness that was going to kill her. So they were ministering the last rites. But she had a vision of Jesus on the cross when shedding his blood for her. And she had 16 visions. She was healed. And she went about doing good and writing. Anyway, she says, quote, God showed me I should take my stand and earnestly believe that all manner of things shall be well. So I think I'm going to leave it at that. Bless you.